wait till I'm 21 to get a handgun, but I can get this weapon at 18. I don't know. So I was just curious as to what you did in your bill.
We didn't address it, Mr. President. Look, I think
you know why? Because you're afraid of the NRA, right?
No, an issue. The NRA 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's a big issue right now. A lot of people
look at all the staffers. Even Manchin is going, he's not afraid of the NRA. He and I partnered on the legislation. What the hell are you talking about? But Trump is accusing Toomey of being afraid of the NRA, which is just great press for the NRA, considering the entire Democratic Party and the media have been claiming that the real reason Republicans are pro-gun is because they're afraid of the NRA. So well done, Mr. President, for doubling down on that idiotic message. Then the president went even further, and that's the clip we're about to show you where Dianne Feinstein jumps for joy. Amy Klobuchar, who's the senator from Minnesota, she suggests that they add an assault weapons ban to Manchin Toomey. So not only would there be a full gun registry, now you would not be able to buy an assault weapon, meaning any rifle in the United States that has a couple of features added to it, like a pistol grip and a certain type of barrel, for example, or a sight. If you added those things, if the gun looks scary, it's an assault weapon. Republicans have opposed this forever. Amy Klobuchar says, why don't we do it? And Trump immediately says, yeah, let's wrap that up into an even bigger gun control package. And watch Dianne Feinstein's reaction. Dianne Feinstein is 84 years old, but suddenly she's a little girl again. Dianne Feinstein, she's been my senator virtually my entire life. She's been senator here since I was 10 years old, Dianne Feinstein, or 9 years old. I have never seen Dianne Feinstein smile, ever, not once on tape. Like there's this myth that once Dianne Feinstein smiled and a rainbow came out. Like she's not a big laugher and a big smiler. Okay, watch as she turns into a small child clapping for glee, like my kids when I give them chocolate, when Trump says this about assault weapons. It's really amazing.
Just doing something on this background check issue and using that as a base, and then I would like to add some of these other things we've talked about, I think would make a major difference.
So if you could add that to this bill, that would be great, Diane. If you could add what you have also, and I think you can, into the bill.
Yeah.
So
Joe, are you ready?
Can you do that? Joe, can you do that back? Can you add some of the things? You're not going to agree with me.
Yeah, if you help.
Well, no, I'll help, but can you add what Amy and what Diane have? Can we add them in? And I know you can add what John has.
I have another.
Okay, and look at the Republicans. They're all like, what is going on now? Like Cornyn, who's sitting right next to Trump, you can see he's putting his hand to his mouth like, this can't be happening. This isn't real. Like, Trump really doesn't know what he's saying here. And Dianne Feinstein knows exactly what Trump's saying. Again, she's 84 years old, and suddenly she's my 4-year-old daughter. She's so gleeful. If you are saying things about guns that are making Dianne Feinstein gleeful, let me suggest that you have undermined the Second Amendment and that you are not standing with conservative ideas on the Second Amendment. Okay, then it gets even worse. So he turns to Cornyn, who's sitting right next to him, and he says, you know what we should do? We should actually do a comprehensive gun reform, like a big, big bill, like a big historic bill. And you can see Cornyn going, what the hell is going on? Like, was he dropped on his head this morning? Did he wake up on the wrong side of the bed? Was it invasion of the body snatchers? Like, what in the world? Look at John Cornyn's face here.
And John, Fix Nix has some really good things in it, but it would be nice if we could add everything onto it. And maybe you change the title, all right? The U.S. background check bill or whatever. But your bill is really good and really important, having to do with a certain aspect. But maybe we could make it much more comprehensive and have one bill instead of 15 different bills that nobody knows what's happening.
If we can get 60 votes for it, Mr. President,
I think
I'm all
you can.
for it.
Honestly, I think, look, I really believe
steps in,
this
he
is
goes,
one of the things we...
Cornyn steps in, he goes, Mr. President, you're acting like a child. We need 60 votes, and we're not going to get it. So the president, of course, just completely overlooks this. It was just ridiculous, ridiculous on every possible level. And it gets even more ridiculous. Okay, so this is the thing that is most ridiculous and had people really up in arms, as they should be. So the president is talking about, so Vice President Pence starts talking about a proposal that was first made by David French, a proposal that I backed, for gun violence restraining orders. Gun violence restraining orders are a process that we have here in California where close family and friends can apply to a court to have your gun rights temporarily suspended if they show, past a certain burden of proof, that there is evidence that you are a danger to yourself or others. And then there is a hearing. Right? So there's due process. So the due process can go in a couple ways. You could have the hearing before the guns are removed, or you could have a preliminary hearing in which all of the evidence is shown, and then the guns are temporarily removed because we don't want people sitting around there with guns, and then the guy realizes that the cops are going to come take away his guns. He goes, shoots up the school. Okay, so you can have due process in the sense that you have the right to confront the accuser, but it's done on really spontaneous, quick basis. Or you could have like a full drawn-out hearing. But both of those are due process. So Mike Pence explains the proposal, and Trump proceeds to pile drive the proposal. Trump proceeds to take Pence's proposal, the gun violence restraining order proposal, the David French proposal, and he proceeds to say something so wildly unconstitutional and so wildly unconservative that it boggles the mind. I mean, if Barack Obama had uttered these words, we would all be up in arms The reason that it's different if Obama had said them and than Trump saying them, honestly, is that Obama knew what he was talking about on these issues, and Trump clearly doesn't. Anyway, here's Mike Pence saying something smart, and then Donald Trump following up with something so egregiously stupid that minds of small children were blown all over the country.
Because a lot of times, by the time you go to court, it takes so long to go to court to get the due process procedures. I like taking the guns early, like in this crazy man's case that just took place in Florida. He had a lot of firearms. They saw everything. To go to court would have taken a long time. So you could do exactly what you're saying, but take the guns first, go through due process second.
Okay, that's not what due process is. The reason this is a problem is not because anybody wants mentally ill, violent people to have guns. Nobody wants that. But it is astonishing to me that the same people on the left who are afraid of Trump becoming an authoritarian are sitting there laughing with glee when the President of the United States says somebody applies to have somebody else's gun rights taken away, and we should all just shrug. I mean, honestly, that's what the President of the United States says right there. The President of the United States just said that you should be able to go into the police, should be able to go into your house. I should be able to go to the cops and say to them, my next door neighbor's crazy, and not show any evidence, right? There's no due process. I just call up and I say, tip, next door neighbor's crazy. And the cops go and take that guy's guns and maybe arrest him, right? And then later comes the due process. We fought an entire revolution to prohibit this sort of thing. We fought an entire revolution so that there would be a right to habeas corpus, so you know why you're being arrested and your rights are being violated. We fought an entire revolution so there are no ex post facto laws that were specifically designed after the fact in order to get certain people. None of this is part of the constitutional order. But the president, who is a Republican, was sitting there saying this stuff with a straight face. Now, this brings us to our I'll get to the last question as to whether any of this is important in a second. He didn't even stop there. Because, I mean, everybody on the right is just looking at this going, what happened? I mean, what? It was every WTF GIF that you can find online. I mean, every face that you can make, right, was being made by Republicans yesterday watching this thing unfold in real time. It's astonishing. It's astonishing. Okay, then he goes after Steve Scalise. Steve Scalise, shooting victim in the congressional baseball shooting. And Scalise has proposed, and the NRA has proposed, and Trump has endorsed in his 2016 election cycle, the idea of concealed carry reciprocity. The idea of concealed carry reciprocity. Concealed carry reciprocity is the idea that when you apply for a concealed carry license in Oklahoma and you are approved by the government for that concealed carry license, you should be able to concealed carry in any other state. Normally, this sort of thing is fine. Like if you have a marriage license in one state, it's usually transferable over to another state. If you have a liquor license in one state, and it fulfills the obligations of the other state, then it should be able to be fulfilled in that state, I believe. But when it comes to concealed carry, there's questions as to whether you should be able to take your concealed carry license from Oklahoma and bring it over to California. And so Trump is told by Steve Scalise that they want this concealed carry reciprocity. And President Trump's response is, as always, amazing. Here's the President of the United States responding to Steve Scalise by saying, we can never do this. It can't be a thing.
And there were a lot of our members that said, look, we want to close these problems and fix these problems with the background check system. And we came together and actually passed a bill. But we also felt that if you look at the concealed carry population, these are people, by and large, who are helping us stop crimes. These are people who are well-trained, who actually go out there and help prevent crimes. So I would hope that that's not immediately dismissed, because there is a lot of talk of just putting that on the side. And just
I do think this. You know I'm your biggest fan of the whole world, all right? I think that maybe that bill will someday pass, but it should pass as a separate. If you're going to put concealed carry between states into this bill, we're talking about a whole new ballgame. And, you know, I'm with you, but...
Okay, the senator from Minnesota, look at the Democrats. She's sitting there nodding along. And the Republicans are all sitting there with their arms crossed. Look at the body language here. All the Republicans are going, where is this coming from? This is the guy who days ago was talking about how great the NRA was. This is a guy who was a few days ago talking about the value of gun rights. This is a guy who a couple of days ago was talking about how we needed to protect our right to keep and bear arms. And it does shed some light on something that the president said during his CPAC speech. During that CPAC speech, he had this very weird line where he said, if you could choose between tax cuts and gun rights, which would you choose? And he was expecting everybody in the room to say tax cuts. And everybody in the room said gun rights. And he was kind of shocked by it. Because, again, the president is not a stalwart on gun rights. On a gut level, he's not. Now, one of the nice things is that the president of the United States can be turned to whoever talks to him last. This is one of the nice things about the president. He is willing to hear opposing points of view, is the nice way of putting it. Also, the president of the United States can't do all these things because he just doesn't have the votes. But here's where it does become important. So this stuff is not important right now. Because when Trump says stuff right now, Who cares? Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell, they're the ones who are putting the legislation together. When he said dumb stuff about Obamacare, it didn't really matter very much. When he said dumb things about the tax bill, it didn't matter very much. When he said dumb things about immigration, it didn't matter very much. The president saying dumb things is baked into the cake. We all know that the president is going to say stuff, and we're all going to go, "Rrr?" And we've all gotten used to that. But what happens if, in November, Democrats take back the House of Representatives? And let's say they get really lucky and they take back the Senate. Let's say the Democrats suddenly have control of the Senate and the House of Representatives. Then, all of a sudden, the president of the United States saying these things may actually make a difference. Because you could see a situation in which Democrats are the ones writing the bill. Right now, the check on the president saying dumb things is a Congress that's not going to write dumb things. But what happens when the Congress can write dumb things? What happens when Nancy Pelosi is Speaker of the House, and she's sitting in a meeting like this with the President of the United States, and he says, I want you to put X, Y, and Z into a bill, and it's a comprehensive gun reform bill that's going to require full background checks for every sale in the United States, which will require registry, and everything that the President says about assault weapons would be wrapped into a bill, and no concealed carry reciprocity, and raising the age to buy a rifle. And the President says all this in front of Nancy Pelosi, and she says, sure, Mr. President, we're with you. And what happens when Chuck Schumer is the Senate Majority Leader, and he says to Trump, sounds great, Mr. President. I'll tell you what happens. The President gets all of the bad things we don't want him to be saying and having right now. That's what happens. How do I know that's what happens? Because that's exactly what happened on the budget last year. You recall that Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan were using the debt ceiling debate as a way to cut some spending. And the President of the United States had in Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, and he said to them directly, listen, guys, I don't care about cutting anything. Let's just blow out the spending. And they said, fine. And they walked out. And Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell were just stunned because the president did have the capacity to do that. He had the votes to do that. Well, right now, it doesn't matter again because the Republicans are running the show. But when the Republicans are not running the show, things are going to get pretty dicey pretty quickly, which is why it's important that Republicans maintain control of the House as a check on President Trump, because the president's instincts are not always good on these sorts of things. And he's not surrounded by a bunch of Second Amendment advocates. Okay, the people who are closest to the president, aside from Mike Pence, these are not all super pro-Second Amendment people. It's a